You know, Gene, I'm a little disturbed about this whole thing because I wanted the producers to show the people here in Boston exactly what happened.
Tito Santana, born Merced Solis, wasn't just a wrestler, he was an icon. This Latino superstar brought a unique blend of athleticism, charisma, and in-ring skill to the WWE, making audiences throughout the 80s and early 90s go crazy. But this legend also had a troubled past, a past so controversial that people still discuss it today. Let's dissect one by one what led to the rise, fall, and ultimate success of our 71-year-old legend. Known for his upbeat personality, Santana became a fan favorite in the wrestling world, especially during his time with the World Wrestling Federation, WWF, from 1979 to 1993. He's celebrated for his two-time WWF Intercontinental Heavyweight Champion title and two-time Tag Team Champion title, teaming up with Ivan Putski and later with Rick Martel. Santana was part of some historic wrestling moments, including winning the first match at WrestleMania against the Executioner and taking home the title at the 1989 King of the Ring tournament. He was also a crucial bridge between the Rock and Wrestling Connection era of the 1980s and the New Generation era of the 1990s, making him a standout name in WWF's golden years. But then came the controversies that truly and genuinely affected his larger-than-life career. You know, it's funny. Tito was born and raised in Texas, just like any other Texan. But when he got to WWE, they decided to say he was from Tlaxcala, Mexico. It wasn't a real place, you know. They just made it up. And then, to make things worse, Jesse Ventura, the commentator, kept calling Tito's flying forearm smash a flying burrito. Now, I get that they were trying to give him a character, but it kind of relied on old stereotypes about Hispanic people. It's like they were saying all Hispanic wrestlers are the same, which just isn't true. It's a shame because Tito was a great wrestler and a good guy, and he deserved better than to be reduced to a stereotype. Now, I'd like to give my 2 cents on something I'm sure you'd agree with. Tito Santana was one of the most beloved wrestlers of his era. He had the looks, the charisma, the in-ring skills, and the connection with the fans. He was a true professional, always putting on a great show and representing the company with class. But despite all that, it always felt like he was held back from reaching the very top. He won championships, of course. He was a 2-time Intercontinental Champion and a Tag Team Champion. But the WWE World Heavyweight Championship, the biggest prize in the company, always eluded him. He had a shot at it in the late 80s, feuding with Macho Man Randy Savage, but the storyline never quite reached its full potential. Why did this happen? It's hard to say for sure. Some people believe that his clean-cut, all-American babyface persona may have worked against him in an era that was increasingly embracing edgier, more controversial characters. Others argue that he was simply a victim of circumstance, caught in a crowded field of talented wrestlers. Whatever the reason, it's undeniable that Tito had the potential to be a world champion, and it's a shame that it never quite materialized. Not only this, Strike Force, the popular tag team of Tito Santana and Rick Martel, is a name that resonates with wrestling fans. But did you know that they almost had a completely different name? And not just any name, but a name that would have been incredibly controversial, especially considering Tito's Hispanic heritage. Believe it or not, WWE actually considered calling them the Border Patrol. Just imagine the implications of that name, the potential for offense and misunderstanding. Thankfully, someone in the company had the good sense to realize that this was a terrible idea, and they ultimately went with a much more appropriate Strike Force. This incident reveals a lot about the decision-making process in WWE at the time. It's a reminder that even the most successful and beloved wrestling acts could have easily gone down a very different and potentially harmful path. Then Santana himself admitted to experimenting with steroids early in his career, but quickly realized the potential health risks and chose to stop. He has since become an advocate for clean living and has spoken out against the pressure that many wrestlers feel to use performance-enhancing drugs. In interviews, Santana has discussed the tragic consequences of substance abuse, citing examples of colleagues whose lives were cut short or irreparably damaged by addiction. He believes that the wrestling industry has a responsibility to educate its performers about the dangers of drugs and to provide support for those struggling with addiction. While Santana's own experience with substance abuse was limited, his willingness to speak openly about the issue and his advocacy for a healthier lifestyle within the wrestling industry is commendable. He serves as a positive role model for aspiring wrestlers and a reminder that success can be achieved without compromising one's health and well-being. Sure, the discrimination was uncalled for, but our legend shone bright regardless. He was a master, a huge wrestling champ, and it'd be such a shame to click away without reliving his legacy and honorable career. The next segment is for the real fans. Tito Santana loved wrestling, but before he could become a superstar, he needed to learn the ropes. So he trained really hard with some of the best wrestlers in the world, guys like Hiro Matsuda and Bob Orton. They taught him everything he needed to know about wrestling: how to grapple, how to slam, and how to excite the crowd. After practicing with these pros, Tito was finally ready for his first match. He was so nervous. It was in Florida on February 23, 1977, and his opponent was a tough guy named Crusher Verdue. Tito didn't win that first match, but he learned a lot. He knew this was just the beginning of his wrestling journey. A few months later, Tito started wrestling in Georgia. He decided to try something new and wrestled under a different name, Richard Blood. He spent a whole year there, getting better and better with each match. He wrestled against other new guys, and they all pushed each other to improve. Next, Tito traveled to Mid-Atlantic Championship Wrestling to wrestle. He was becoming more and more popular with the fans. Then he got a really big opportunity, a chance to wrestle overseas in Japan. He toured with All Japan Pro Wrestling and learned even more about wrestling. Tito was finally becoming a star. He had worked so hard and people were starting to notice. It wasn't long before the biggest wrestling company in the world, the World Wrestling Federation, came calling. Tito Santana was on top of the world. He had made it to the biggest wrestling company around, the World Wrestling Federation, WWF. His first match was on April 17, 1979, and he beat a guy named Mike Hall. The fans loved Tito because he was so exciting to watch and always gave it his all. It wasn't long before Tito found a tag team partner, a really strong wrestler named Ivan Putski. They were an awesome team, almost like they could read each other's minds in the ring. In October 1979, they had a really important match at the famous Madison Square Garden. They were up against the Valiant Brothers, and the crowd went wild when Tito and Ivan won. They were the new WWF Tag Team Champions. Everyone knew Tito Santana's name now. Tito and Ivan were champions for a long time, almost 6 months. They fought hard every time they wrestled to keep those championships, but eventually they lost the titles to a team called the Wild Samoans. Tito wasn't sad about losing. He knew that even the best wrestlers lose sometimes. He wanted to keep getting better and have new adventures. So he decided to travel far away to Japan to wrestle. He wrestled in front of Japanese fans who had never seen him before. It was a great experience for Tito, and he learned a lot about wrestling in a different country. Between 1980 and 1982, Santana moved to the American Wrestling Association, where he continued wrestling against some of the sport's toughest competitors. His matches in the AWA were intense, especially his encounters with Nick Bockwinkel, a skilled wrestler known for his devious tactics. Bockwinkel managed to defeat Santana in matches in St. Paul, Minnesota in 1981 and in Winnipeg, Canada in 1982, often through underhanded tactics. While in the AWA, Santana also partnered with Rick Martel, a Canadian wrestler who would become a close ally. In August 1982, the two teamed up to face the popular High Flyers team, though they lost. This partnership, however, would plant the seeds for a future tag team alliance when both men eventually returned to WWF. Santana made his return to the WWF in 1983, marking the beginning of what would become the most iconic phase of his career. Initially brought in for select TV tapings, he officially signed full-time with the WWF later that year. By 1984, Santana was aiming high and got a shot at the WWF Heavyweight Championship, held by the Iron Sheik. Their match ended in a double disqualification, but Santana's performance captured the attention of fans in the WWF. Santana soon set his sights on the Intercontinental Championship, held by the magnificent Morocco. After a thrilling series of matches, Santana finally clinched the title on February 11, 1984, making history as the first Mexican-American wrestler to hold the Intercontinental Championship. His win marked a new high point in his career, cementing his legacy in WWF. Shortly after winning the title, Santana faced a new challenge in Greg the Hammer Valentine, who defeated him in September 1984. In the storyline, Valentine injured Santana's knee, sidelining him for several months. Santana returned with determination, using Valentine's own figure-4 leg lock as his finisher, and eventually reclaimed his Intercontinental title in a brutal steel cage match on July 6, 1985. Following the match, Valentine destroyed the old championship belt, and Santana was awarded a new one, a symbol of both his perseverance and his place in WWF history. In August 1987, Santana reunited with his former AWA partner, Rick Martel, to form Strikeforce, one of the most beloved tag teams of the era. The duo had excellent chemistry and quickly gained fan support. They achieved one of their biggest accomplishments by defeating the Hart Foundation for the WWF Tag Team Championship on WWF Superstars, with Martel applying his famous Boston Crab to secure the victory. Strikeforce held the titles for several months, defending them against some of WWF's toughest tag teams. Unfortunately, at WrestleMania 4 in March 1988, they lost the titles to Demolition. After the loss, Martel took a leave of absence due to his wife's health issues. Santana then introduced the Powers of Pain, a team he briefly managed to help them seek revenge on Demolition. Martel returned in 1989 and Strikeforce reunited, hoping to reclaim their former glory. However, during their WrestleMania 5 match against the Brainbusters, tensions boiled over when Martel left the ring after a misfired attack from Santana, marking the end of Strikeforce and the beginning of a bitter rivalry between the two former friends. Santana continued his singles career, focusing on reclaiming the Intercontinental title. When the Ultimate Warrior vacated the title after winning the WWF Heavyweight Championship, Santana entered an 8-man tournament for the Intercontinental Championship. He made it to the finals but lost to Mr. Perfect. Despite the loss, Santana remained a mainstay in WWF and continued to participate in significant events. Santana also took part in the 1990 Survivor Series, joining a team with the Bushwhackers and Nikolai Volkov. He went on to be the last man standing for his team, leading him to a match alongside Hulk Hogan and the Ultimate Warrior. Although Santana was pinned by Ted DiBiase, his performance further demonstrated his resilience and skill. In 1991, Santana adopted a new persona, El Matador, inspired by the Spanish bullfighter tradition. As El Matador, he entered WrestleMania weight to face Shawn Michaels in an exciting opening match. Though he ultimately lost, his new gimmick brought a fresh look and energy to his character, resonating with fans around the world. Santana competed under the El Matador persona through 1993, engaging in matches with rising stars and fan-favorite wrestlers. His last official WrestleMania match took place at WrestleMania 9, where he won a non-televised dark match against Papa Shango. This victory was a fitting bookend to Santana's legacy as a performer who competed in each of the first 9 WrestleMania events, sharing that rare distinction with only one other superstar, Hulk Hogan. Tito Santana's career is a testament to hard work, passion, and commitment, leaving an impact on professional wrestling that still resonates with fans and wrestlers alike. Santana wasn't just a skilled athlete, he was a dedicated performer who consistently delivered memorable matches, regardless of whether he was wrestling for a title, teaming with a partner, or putting over newer stars. His contributions set him apart as one of the most reliable and respected figures in wrestling, both in the ring and behind the scenes. Tito Santana made history in 1984 by becoming the first Mexican-American wrestler to win the Intercontinental Championship. At a time when professional wrestling was still growing in diversity, Santana stood out as a Latino star who brought pride and representation to millions of Hispanic fans around the world. His popularity proved that wrestling could resonate with fans from all backgrounds, paving the way for future Latino stars like Eddie Guerrero, Rey Mysterio, and more. Santana's success showed wrestling promotions the value of having diverse talent in their rosters, and his pioneering efforts have been credited with helping open doors for other Hispanic and minority wrestlers. Through his career, Santana represented what it meant to be a professional wrestler in every sense of the word. He paved the way for future generations, showed the power of representation, and inspired countless fans with his in-ring achievements. Even after retiring from full-time wrestling, Tito Santana's influence can be seen in the industry, reminding everyone that wrestling is not just about wins and losses, but about passion, respect, and connecting with the audience. Tito's legacy is built on respect, both earned and given, making him a lasting icon in professional wrestling. If you're a fan of classic wrestling moments and want to dive deeper into Tito Santana's career and other wrestling icons, hit the subscribe button on my channel. I cover the golden era of wrestling, from unforgettable matches to behind-the-scenes stories, so you can experience the glory days all over again. Check out my latest videos on wrestling legends like Tito Santana and join the community for more throwbacks, highlights, and in-depth wrestling history.